Hey friends! Welcome to my first official Cryptid Crossing video. I'm so excited to launch this series, even if it doesn't do well, because I think it's going to be really fun. So, with that said, please like and subscribe if you want to see more, and be sure to show some support if you like what I am putting out. For those of you who know me in real life, you know my all-time favorite cryptid is Mothman. He is my late brother's favorite. We discovered Mothman together when we actually watched that Richard Gere movie, Mothman Prophecies. We watched it as kids, and it's honestly been really special to me since then because I lost my brother, and that was just something we really enjoyed and discovered together. And it was one of our little special interests. So, without further ado, let's get into some dailies and this incredible story. For those of you that are unfamiliar, which I doubt there's very many, Mothman is said to be a 10-foot tall winged humanoid. Witness accounts can vary on the color and texture of his body, but it's usually described as dark and feathered or even furry sometimes. The Mothman is universally described as having bright, glowing red eyes. Supposed sightings are said to date back centuries, but the most infamous sightings occurred in the mid to late 60s in a small town. This small town? Point Pleasant, West Virginia. The first reported sighting in the United States took place on November 12, 1966, when 5 men working at a cemetery saw the creature fly overhead as they dug a grave. Even though this was the first modern day sighting, it was a sighting several days later that became the catalyst for a media circus and widespread chaos. And I mean chaos. It got crazy over there. Okay, so to go back and set the scene, Point Pleasant was a small, quaint town where everyone knew each other and, trusted each other. I'm assuming it was probably like a locking your doors is optional type community, so the panic that ensued was completely unprecedented. It was abnormal. This kind of stuff just didn't happen there. It was just a super chill place to live. I imagine it probably had people really conflicted about not believing their neighbors, who they trust, and probably made things really freaking weird. I imagine it would be weird to spend your life living in a really small town and have all these friends that you trust, and then all of a sudden be like, I don't know if you're going crazy or not, or if I should even believe the nonsense coming out of your mouth. That must have been such a strange, everything flipped all of a sudden. So, to set the scene of the first major sighting, outside Point Pleasant is the former West Virginia Ordnance Works, which was a munitions plant during World War II. But it closed down in 1945, and it is now a wildlife preserve and bird sanctuary known as the McClintock Wildlife Management Area. But apparently, before it became a bird sanctuary, in between it being, closed down and becoming like a birdhouse or whatever, they were just dumping toxic waste out there. Just dumping chemicals and all sorts of very suspicious trash. Which, I don't know why they would do, but, well, I guess it's not that uncommon, though. People be dumping stuff wherever the hell they want. Back to the point. The property is comprised of a lot of little igloo-like bunkers. Apparently, one person said there's hundreds of them. So just a bunch of these little bunkers and a few larger buildings, including labs. I did look on Google Maps. They look pretty spread out. The address is 6182 Ohio River Road, Point Pleasant, West Virginia, if you want to look it up. But just know, a lot of it is private property, so don't go exploring without getting permission. And also, I don't know how dilapidated the buildings are now, so if you're an urban explorer, beware. If you're gonna go out without permission, beware. It's not recommended. You could get in trouble, but if you're gonna go anyways, please be careful that you don't, like, I don't know, fall through, like, 3 stories of whatever and break your legs. Snap your legs off. Decapitated. Lacerated. After the plant was abandoned, it became like a chill spot for the locals in Point Pleasant because it's away from the prying eyes of a tight community. It's secluded. I relate. When I lived in small towns, we always went out to hang in the middle of nowhere to, like, drink or do whatever teenagers do. And apparently this old munitions plant was a popular spot for just, like, driving around and drag racing, like showing off your cars, or, I don't know, drinking, punching people, whatever teenagers are doing, basically. On the night of November 15th, 1966, 2 couples, Roger and Linda Scarberry, along with their friends, the second couple, Steve and Mary Mallett, drove out to the plant, which was at this time nicknamed the TNT area. Probably went out there to do the same stuff everyone else was doing. Some people said they were going out there to, like, race the car around and just, like, get crazy. Yeah, like, small town boredom. The couples, like, probably drove out playing music or whatever and planned on wasting time out there showing off. But a few minutes into the hangout sesh, the couples noticed something moving around in the building they were in front of, and I'm not sure which building it was because there are apparently several. But anyways, they just saw something moving around by the windows. They didn't leave right away, so I'm assuming they didn't just assume it was a monster shambling around in there. But I probably would have been scared either way. If the buildings were super dilapidated, like I'm imagining in my mindscape, even though I don't know, I would probably assume it was a wild animal and not person, because this area was and is surrounded by woods. I wouldn't just assume that a person had gone up there in this, sketchy area. But I don't know if people went in there a lot. I don't know. But they saw this from outside. And I'm guessing they just kind of watched, like, oh, what is that? Who is that? I'm not sure how long they watched, but eventually this shadowy figure made its way out of the building and started making its way towards the couples. In their report, they said as it got closer, it looked like a very tall humanoid with wings mounted high up on its back. They must have been pretty huge, because even folded, they could clearly see them. They also described it as looking almost headless, well, like neckless, I guess, like how owls look. I feel like this can be a difficult visual if you're unfamiliar with Mothman. So definitely look up some fan art and art that witnesses themselves have made if you're having a hard time picturing this. The most notable and universal feature of the Mothman was his enormous, bright red eyes. They are usually described as glowing, but at least one account said they only glowed when a bright light was, like, being, like, shining on them like a flashlight. Obviously, seeing this creature prompted the couples to flee, because this was obviously not a person or a regular freaking owl. It wasn't just like a chicken or something from this bird sanctuary. Like, it was big and scary. So they get in this car, they peel out, speed away, and this creature chased them. Now, obviously, I'm not a bird expert, but I don't see why an owl or a crane or a heron or whatever would chase a speeding car full of screaming people. I'm assuming screaming people. Like, I don't know, maybe the light could attract them, birds. But cars are super loud, and being in a rural area, I think it would scare off a bird. Like, this wasn't a New York City pigeon that lives with that kind of noise every day. That said, I think Roger was the driver and the owner of the car, and homie was flooring it. Allegedly. It was said this car got pushed to its limit, which I imagine would be around like 100 miles an hour. And again, probably loud, but this creature was not giving up. It was said to fly alongside the vehicle, above it, just like following them and keeping up easily. Some people have said it didn't flap its wings throughout like takeoff or flight. It would just kind of float up in the air and start zooming like a plane, I imagine, which is horrifying to imagine. Like, you're seeing this thing, you're in your friend's car, running from it, probably screaming at your friend to go faster, but they are already going dangerously fast. They literally cannot go faster. I imagine at least one of them was crying, and this Birdman is just effortlessly gliding next to you at 100 plus miles per hour. And, like, what if it was looking in the windows at you with those creepy red eyes? No. No thanks. Anyways, to continue, these friends sped all the way back to Point Pleasant, peeing their pants the whole way, I bet. And once they got into town, the creature just, like, kept flying. Apparently, it flew right back to the TNT area because these witnesses were just in shock. Like, did we imagine this? Are we making this up? So these brave-ass people drove all the way back to the TNT area just to get confirmation. And sure enough, they saw it wandering around out there again, just like wandering around in a field or whatever. I'm not sure if the creature chased them back into town this time. It might not have even been aware of their presence, but they went to the police regardless. They got confirmation that they weren't crazy and then went straight to the Point Pleasant police station. I'm assuming because that first sighting was so threatening. It's a small town and their friends all live there, and if the TNT area was as popular as people make it sound, they were probably worried someone would like get eaten by this thing. If it hadn't approached and chased them, it might have just been like a little ghost story among themselves, So these young adults went in, probably seeming panicked, and the officer who took their report seemed super understanding and just really trusted them. I mean, it's a small place. He watched them grow up and he referred to them as kids, so I feel like he was sympathetic. I don't know if he believed they saw a monster necessarily, but he believed they saw something, especially after they were all individually sat down to give statements and they gave identical stories, which is probably not likely if they had just been drunk or like on drugs or were just making it up for fun. They seemed credible, is what I'm saying. They seemed credible to this officer. And I believe the officer either took them to the area to look around or went alone. But it said he did go there, and I guess all he could seem to find were some suspicious animal-type tracks. And he said he heard some strange noises, probably coming from the woods. Which, if you've lived in rural areas, most people around will know different tracks and animal noises. So him thinking it was a little off does hold some weight, in my opinion, especially being law enforcement and acknowledging that, because it seems like they brush off most things as just having a totally normal explanation. Like, calm down, guys, it's probably just the wind. But he did say it was kind of fishy. As far as like brushing things off goes, a good example, the Mason County Sheriff just made a statement saying it was a large heron. Which is weird, because, like, did he go out there? Did he see how scared everybody? I don't know if he knew what he was talking about, but he just brushed everything off and was like, guys, it's just a heron. It's just a big bird. There were a lot of sightings in the following weeks, months, even years. But most were seemingly around 1966 to 1967. 2 volunteer firefighters reported seeing a large bird with big red eyes. Another notable and chilling account came from a local Point Pleasant mother who said the Mothman had come into the window of her infant daughter's bedroom and tried to steal her baby. She had told people there was a struggle, but she did get her baby away from this creature unharmed. But I bet that mom was like messed up, terrified, traumatized. I would have had nightmares for the rest of my life. I would have had that baby sleeping in my bed, just glued to my freaking hip forever. I really hope they recovered emotionally. I just really don't know if I would, though. If that had been me, I don't know if I'd come back from that. Another account that I couldn't find any articles about, but was covered in, I think it was Bailey Sarian's video on the Mothman. This account said that a woman was leaving her family's home. I think it might have been a brother-in-law leaving the family's home when she also encountered this menacing creature. It said that she was leaving the house. She was with her daughter and just like getting in her car, getting everything in the car, getting her little keys out, and she saw this giant shadow standing there. She saw these giant wings and these like glowing eyes and just froze. It allegedly didn't approach her at this point. It just watched her, which is almost scarier to me. I'd be like, is this thing like sizing me up and evaluating me? Like how snakes will like get next to you and check and see if they can swallow you whole or whatever. No thanks. No thanks. So it's just watching her, and she was just standing there frozen. And apparently the brother-in-law saw what was happening and was like, hey, come on, let's go. After she came back to her senses, she was like, hell no, you're right. And took her baby and ran right back into that house. Because, honestly, probably safer than trying to run in the car. Like, when you're fleeing from a giant winged creature, would you even have time to buckle up your baby? Or would you just be speeding with a baby in your arms and hoping you don't crash? Like, if my relative, whoever they are, was like, hey, just get in here. I would take that. Going in that house over that car any day. I'd never be faced with that choice though because I can't drive. So she gets in there, and apparently when they're getting in that house, Mothman, he sure was approaching them now. Apparently he ran after them and like slammed into the door. So everyone is panicking, and it said that they could hear some like footsteps, maybe on a porch or just moving around outside, and they saw the glowing red eyes peering in the windows. It's also said, I'm not sure if this is true, that everyone started trying to barricade the home because this thing was clearly like, it was like looking, it's checking things out, trying to see how I could get in, and he had already tried, so they probably thought it was going to try to get in and do God knows what. It really seemed like if something slams into the door, it's trying to get in your house. That's not an accident. But they called the police during all the chaos, and by the time authorities arrived to help, the creature was already gone. Local papers picked up stories like these and published them, and that had been an ongoing thing. It wasn't like long after. They had been being published due to the booming popularity of comic characters like Batman and Killer Moth, which apparently Killer Moth didn't appear in the TV show, but it was a comic character. The news coined the name Mothman due to the creature's massive wings and giant bug eyes, apparently, because, I mean, I don't, like, people say it had big eyes, but, I mean, there are descriptions saying its eyes were, like, the size of freaking dinner plates. So, yeah, bug eyes, pretty good description, in my opinion. The papers and local gossip didn't just tell the stories of people seeing this creature, though. They also talked about the reported aftermath. Some people talked about sensing the Mothman after having seen him, having developed psychic abilities, and seen visions of the future, including visions of tragedies to come. Some witnesses even said they'd been visited by the mysterious men in black, which, paired with an influx of UFO sightings that were like clustered around near Mothman sightings, this led some to question if the creature was, in fact, an alien. Premonitions of tragedies would be considered with greater interest after the December 15th collapse of the Silver Bridge in 1967. And I do want to preface this with, this was a terrible tragedy, and a lot of people will speculate Mothman's involvement, but people who were alive at this time and lost friends and family have said This had nothing to do with the Mothman, and it's very frustrating to hear people continue to drag this out because it's not about the Mothman. A lot of people that we really cared about died that day. But when you're discussing Mothman, this is like a repeated thing that always gets brought up. It was mentioned in movies, and it's just kind of important to the lore, so I am going to go over it. But please be mindful if you're making comments about what happened, and please be mindful of if you know someone that was alive then, maybe don't bring this up to them. Maybe just listen to the story and just let it be. The Silver Bridge crossed the Ohio River connecting Route 35 through Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and I'm going to butcher this, Gallipolis. I've heard Gallipolis, Ohio, connected the two. It was a highly trafficked bridge due to its location, and the Silver Bridge tragically collapsed due to a single link in a suspension chain failing under the weight of rush hour traffic. And this was right around Christmas. This is December 15th, 1967. So I can only imagine how horrible that year was, just exacerbated by the fact that trying to celebrate the holidays, and now all of these people are missing. And it was a lot of people. 46 people died due to the incident, and 2 bodies, tragically, were never recovered. Ominously, the Mothman was reportedly seen flying around the bridge before its collapse, but again, this is something that residents who were alive during this time and witnessed this said, no one reported this before the bridge collapsed. It seems like that just came out after, like people just started throwing that around. So I don't know if there's any validity to this, but it comes up a lot. And it formed a lot of the influential, like, ideas and theories surrounding the Mothman. The reports that Mothman was seen there, it had some people convinced that this creature was an omen of death, or maybe even a demon responsible for sabotaging the bridge. Others insist that Mothman is a benevolent being sent to warn of tragedy. They think the sight of him is meant to frighten people so they will avoid or evacuate an area. This idea was bolstered by supporters who point out the changes to bridge construction and inspection protocol after the Silver Bridge collapse. Yeah, after the Silver Bridge collapse, not to take away from that, they did change a lot of the protocol. And some people were like, this wouldn't have happened without the Mothman. And additionally, a similarly constructed bridge nearby was actually demolished in favor of safer structures, which could have potentially saved a lot of lives. We don't know if that bridge would have collapsed, but that is a precaution that was taken because of this tragedy that supposedly, allegedly, involved the Mothman. People have also claimed to see the Mothman before earthquakes, tsunamis, and lots of other natural disasters. He was notably claimed to have been seen at the site of 9/11, preceding and during the terrifying collapse of the World Trade Center. Again, that didn't come out till after, so I don't know. And there are also a lot of very poorly photoshopped images of the Mothman supposedly flying around the Twin Towers as they collapsed. So, yeah, ever since the Silver Bridge, he's like kind of become rooted in the lore surrounding all sorts of tragedies. And a lot of people find it very disrespectful. Other people think it's just an interesting ghost story. But either way, it has become a pop culture phenomenon. Mothman has been seen as recently as 2017 during a slew of reported sightings in Chicago. I'm not sure if any tragedy followed these sightings, but I know there are a lot of tornadoes in Illinois, so mayhaps. Some critics claimed that the sightings were just sandhill cranes, though, which are large birds with a considerable wingspan up to 2 meters and red-rimmed eyes. So they do have, like, reddish eyes. Oh, I don't know if it's the same, but they're reportedly common in like the Chicago area. Witnesses from Chicago to Point Pleasant deny those explanations. They deny all explanations that Mothman is any sort of bird. They're like, we're not dumb. We would know the difference. I'm not an idiot. Which is like, especially understandable coming from a rural community that's very familiar with this kind of wildlife. And honestly, I get it. In conclusion, the Mothman was an insane pop culture phenomenon, and it created so much chaos during the peak of the sightings in Point Pleasant. There were hundreds of people going out to the TNT area and like looking for this thing, and there were countless sightings that you can read up on. I withheld almost all of them, for the sake of brevity, but hundreds of people were going out there. There was an insane amount of sightings, an insane amount of UFO sightings, all sorts of claims flying around. The madness, the hysteria got to the point that I think they called in the National Guard to handle the influx of people going to the TNT area to look for this thing. It was insane. It was insane. And so many theories have come out. Movies, documentaries. Point Pleasant at one point really leaned into the Mothman lore, and now they have a yearly Mothman festival. You can buy all sorts of merch. The city has like a special statue, and it has shaped, I don't want to say a culture, but kind of it is its own little like cult that has enveloped this small town and has become just iconic all around the world. But now I want to know, what do you think? Is Mothman an alien, an angel, a harbinger of death, or just a really big freaking owl? Or like a crane, or a heron, or whatever? Let me know in the comments below what you think Mothman is, and have you seen him? Do you know anyone who's seen him? I would love to hear about it. Be sure to like and subscribe for more Cryptid Crossing content, and I will see you guys next time. And that's Risky Biscuit signing off. Bye.